There we go.
Right, perfect.
Welcome back to Between the Levees. I have with me today Mr. Jonathan Jackson, works for Associated Terminals, is in the office now, but started out on deck. Don't know much about him. We have a mutual connection from the past. I believe we both got our start kind of at AEP. But before we get into any of that, sir, welcome to the show. And where do we find you today?
Hey, so how you doing, Tim? I'm glad to finally be a part of the show. I'm a big fan of it. I've been
Yeah, I
watching
was
the episodes for a couple years.
I was looking,
Um,
bud. I first started hitting you up 2 years ago, almost 2 years and a month.
yeah,
So
definitely.
I'm glad we finally got this set up. Um, I was in the middle of a mad dash to 100 episodes that first year, right about when I started talking to you. And then, of course, some things happened in my personal life that delayed it further.
Right,
Out of the blue, earlier this month, you reached back out and said, "Hey, I'm still here, still interested." So, thanks again
right,
for getting
definitely.
on. I cut you
Oh,
off there.
100%. Yeah, man. Hey, and thank you for having me be on the show. Actually, Captain Austin O'Bannon. He was originally the guy that recommended me to you, and that's where you reached out to me, and been following the show for quite a few years. I'm glad to see the growth that you're having on the channel, man. You're racking up. You definitely in the 200s by now, huh?
On total videos,
Yeah, total videos and
almost 200, if not just over.
yeah, definitely. So, man, but yeah, I'm glad to finally be a part of this show. First and foremost. But you find me, I'm actually in my home recording studio. Just trying to make sure I give the best quality possible for your channel. Um, and it's just Sunday, man. I'm just enjoying time with the family. I got my twin girls. They're actually being quiet right now. Hopefully, we don't hear any background noise from them. But as far as I go, I am 30 years old now. I've been with Associated Terminals for 10 years. I was born and raised in the city of Laplace, Louisiana. I lived there for the first 8 years of my life, moved to Baton Rouge for a little bit, and then found myself in the Central Parish living in Prairieville. Been here ever since 2006 of August. So pretty much is where I reside in this area, Central Parish.
I don't think I realized you live in Prairieville too. We'll have to get a beer or something one of these days.
Oh, 100%, man.
Yeah. Um, we moved here, well, we moved to Baton Rouge in late, when the hell was that? It was late 2009. And then we bought this house in Prairieville in April of 2010. Do you
Yeah, definitely.
you work a normal 5 day a week schedule?
Yeah, normal Monday through Friday. I work an on-call weekend occasionally,
Okay.
like every fourth weekend out of the month. I
Yeah.
cover in like the operations manager spot for the weekend and get a little taste of that 24 hours a day pretty much when
Yeah.
you're in that role. But yeah, just normal, typical 7 to 4 type work
Hmm.
day.
Yeah, we'll circle back to that towards the end. Um, well, what do you produce in this home studio?
So I actually do YouTube videos, TikTok. Um my main focus is basketball. So I talk about a lot of basketball, react to a lot of videos. I do podcasting with my older brother, Joshua Jackson, which is actually a Twitch streamer. So occasionally I might collab with him for a video. Some buddies of mine know me talk about music, what's going on, hip hop or what's going on in the world. But wide diversity of stuff in which I produce in this studio, but I've been in here since 2021. That's when I started, building out the studio, getting equipment, and every month I just tried to add on more and more things and kind of turn it to what it is now. So actually got a second desk behind me, which I wanted to shoot from, but I was having issues with that earlier. So
How's your YouTube channel doing?
it's doing pretty good to say that I haven't posted in about 3 months. So my main channel is around 1,700 subscribers. Secondary channel like around 750. So it's still growing even though I haven't been posting. I got twin girls. They're 6 months old, so been focusing on parenthood and just taking care of them whenever I get home. And maybe when they get a little older, I'll come back in here and start posting again. But I've been on a little bit of hiatus just because of just enjoying fatherhood and these beautiful girls I got.
Sure. Yeah, my YouTube channel's not even to 700 yet subscribers. I don't know what Spotify is now. and Facebook is probably my strongest, but I don't know how to monetize any of it. So,
Well,
um,
yeah, you're doing a great job though, man. Like just with how consistent you are, like you're one of the most consistent creators I know, man. So
well, it became a second job. It became rather burdensome, and I've taken about a month and a half off, uh, just getting back to publishing. What I was doing once a week, I'm gonna probably push to every couple of weeks, just
okay,
because the day job's a little busier now,
yes.
uh, and I've got other things going on around the house as well. But anyway. Uh, let's back up. You said you were born in Laplace. I was born, I think, about 9 years earlier in Metairie, not too far. But tell me about
Yes.
life growing up in the mid 90s in Laplace.
All right. So life for me was it was like a typical kid growing up. At the time I did have both parents in the household, which it was a beautiful thing. Christian family, so we attended church every Sunday. My mom's actually an ordained evangelist. So, that was real big for us actually attending church and, growing up um in church and making sure that we knew God and, making sure that we were strong in our faith. But didn't really have to worry about too much back then, didn't have to think about a lot. You know, they took care of us, bought us bicycles. I learned how to ride a bike when I was living in Laplace. We had some good childhood friends, like one house down, that we still communicate with still to this day. So, just as a kid, it was a typical upbringing for the most part, for the first 8 years or so of my life.
Well, walk me through the remainder. I know a few moves, I believe a divorce, covering whatever detail you'd like to there. But
Oh
walk
yeah,
me through it.
definitely.
Walk me through kind of what's, school, life outside of school, and what eventually led you to this industry.
Okay, so in the first 8 years of my life, I attended. It was Glade Elementary at the time, but the state ended up taking over. Now it's known as Lake Pontchartrain School off of what's that 51, leading up to the interstate. And then shortly after that, my parents actually, you know, mutual differences ended up having a divorce. And so my mom and my brother, we moved to Baton Rouge, lived in this neighborhood known as Gardier. I think it's still known as that. Lived there for quite a few years, went to Magnolia Woods Elementary School, went to Wedgewood Elementary School, then ended up going to Kenilworth Middle School for about a year until my mom actually got a job with FEMA, and money was pretty good to where I was able to get out of Gardier and move to Prairieville, and pretty much been in the Ascension Parish area ever since. But as far as like childhood goes, you know, for any kid that participates like in a divorce, it is a challenge because like as a kid, you don't really understand what all adults are going through, right? Their differences and why they have to split. As a kid, you just want your parents to be together, and that was my dream. But of course, like knowing what I know now, it was really best for the family for that to happen. But at the time, I just wanted to just be a kid with both parents in the house. With that being said, I did kind of have to mature and grow up quickly. My mom, single mom raising us, still had to provide, so she was still working. She was working on a college degree at the time, so she was actually doing online college to maintain a degree in medical office management, which she actually obtained and got a bachelor's in from Kaplan. But as a kid, like it's just me and my brother for the most part growing up. My older brother, which we're still close to this day, one of my best friends in the world. We was just get home from school, take care of each other, bonded, played video games, just hung out with each other for the most part. But that was my childhood. That's where I got my approach from, like with my maturity level, just going through that period in that span. Of course, like growing up in Gardier, you do have to be smart and stay out of trouble. And that's why I kind of learned how to do those things at a young age.
Yeah, my parents were divorced before I have any memory of anything. And then a number of marriages that followed there. But an interesting point or question, what was or was there a bit of for lack of a better term, culture shock going from Laplace to
Oh
Gardier?
yes. Huge culture shock. In Laplace, we lived in this neighborhood. It's called Cambridge. We live toward the front. It's a big discrepancy between the front and the back. Most people say, but going from like a suburban area to a city type environment, and where it was a rough upbringing, where people had fights, where crime was happening, robberies took place, all that stuff. It was big. It was a big culture shock. But luckily for us, we had an outstanding mom that taught us and prepared us, um, and just equipped us and with how to protect ourselves, and making sure to look out for one another, make sure whenever we got home, this is how you lock the doors, make sure the alarm's on, put the jack behind the door, the whole nine. So you know, I believe I needed that, and I believe a lot of people they get in some bad predicaments because they don't necessarily know how to protect themselves in the reality of what we're dealing with in the world in some parts. So, but it was a big culture shock, but I'm glad I went through it.
And then I think you said, yeah, next was to Prairieville. So fill me in on that jump, kind of where your life was and what that culture shock was.
Definitely. So going from Baton Rouge, the city type environment to kind of like the country, Prairieville at the time, it's not as developed as it is now. Now you have subdivisions everywhere. You have brand new schools being built, a lot of businesses
What
coming
year?
to the area.
What year was this?
Um, this was 2006.
Okay, around that time was the first time I ever came to Prairieville too. A
Yes,
college girlfriend led me this way. But anyway, that was
definitely.
ages and lives ago. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, man, it's fine, man. But well, I mean, as you may know, it's a very rural area. Highway 42 was only 2 lanes at the time, and now it's four. But um, it was a lot different making that transition from inner city area to the country, because now you kind of have to get that mentality out you a little bit. I was kind of always on the defensive, and now kind of being in the country, in the country area, like I kind of had to like let my guard down a little bit. With that being said, I didn't really have a lot of friends whenever I moved out to the Prairieville area. The few friends that I made in that span, I'm actually still friends with to this day. But just going from that area to Gardier to Prairieville was just, I don't know, the shock. I wouldn't really say it was much shock, but it was a big difference, and it was a lot comforting being in Prairieville than it was being in Gardier.
And where was your dad in that whole time period? Where did y'all still get to see him?
We saw my dad pretty much every single weekend. My dad, he resided in Hahnville, Louisiana at the time, which is in St. Charles Parish, West Bank side of the parish, of course. But we see my dad every weekend. Um, he never missed a weekend. And if he did, like we definitely he definitely explained why, but for the most part, every single weekend he could get us. There's 52 weekends in a year. He got us 50, 51 of them. And he was very active in our life. And that's why I gotta say, like growing up, I didn't really have to experience not having a father in my life or absence of any parent because they were both there. Whenever we had like big time events, I played sports. My mom, she got me in basketball, gave me the opportunity to do that. Whenever I got in sports, big games, both my parents was there. Graduation, both of my parents was there. My brother had something going on. My dad was always there. So, like as far as the love and support from both sides, we actually was able to maintain that still, even with the split. And that's why we were still able to be full. And that's why I was able to actually be successful because of both my parents.
I forget the schedule we had with my dad growing up, but I want to say maybe like every other weekend or something, or one weekend a month. I don't remember exactly, but he always lived a good 6 hours away minimum.
Oh wow.
But he'd followed, taking a job up in North Louisiana that led to Chicago, then to Memphis, where he landed till he passed in January of 19. But um, was college in the cards for you?
Wait, come again with that?
Was college in the cards for you?
College was actually in the cards for me. So I went to Santa Mar High School for 4 years. Um, while being at Santa Mall, I actually participated in NJROTC for all 4 years. And I'll say being in that program actually had the biggest impact on my life. Working, I'm saying working with, but being in a mix with my naval science instructors, Master Sergeant Philip Daly and Captain Dennis Beaver. We know him as Top and Cap. And being in that program actually taught us a lot about life and really manhood and how to be disciplined and how to carry yourself every day. You know, that probably had the biggest impact in my life. But also, I played basketball. So I played varsity ball really only my senior year. Wasn't really that good. You can't really look up any statistics of mine, anything like that. But I was on a varsity team, and that actually had an impact in my life as well. But with those two things, I actually had opportunity to go to college. I could have went to college, going through the military because I had a couple offers, through the Air Force, through the Navy, through the Marine Corps. And I also could have just went on my own will. I was actually thinking about going to Southeastern Louisiana College in Hammond. I was going to go there for psychology. The only issue I had was just with my upbringing. He wasn't rich. We were middle class, and I had to pay my own way through college, and that is what actually led me to the river. So I wanted to make quick money. My uncle Cornelius, he still works with ACBL. At the time, it was AEP. I gave him a call. I said, "Hey, Unc, money I'm making isn't fast enough." I was working overnight at Walmart, and prior to working at Walmart, I was flipping burgers at Sonic. So the money there is just it wasn't fast enough for me to make the money I need to actually pay myself through college. So I called my uncle. I said, "Unc, I need a favor. I need to make faster money. I want to come on a river." And my uncle said, "I'll put in a word for you, but I need you to make one promise to me." And he said, "Just promise me that you won't get stuck out here. Promise me that it's just gonna be temporary." And I told him, "Yeah, okay, it's gonna be temporary. I just need to make quick money, and I'm gonna be out my way, going to college and all that stuff." So my uncle, he put a word in for me to the Convent wash dock. A little bit past Belmont, not Belmont, but Convent wash dock, right across from their main office. And at the time, it was Jamie that was over the dock, offered me a job. My first ever job on the river was washing barges, which for those of y'all that know that industry, that's a very labor intensive type job. I definitely formed muscles that I never had before. um, the days were hot, but I learned a lot of stuff. And the people that I work with there, man, some of the best men you'll ever know. They looked out for me. I was only an 18-year-old kid when I first started in that industry. Um, a guy named Chad Hill, which he's actually still with ACBL. After the merge, he stayed with them. He just works in a different area. He took me under his wing personally and showed me around the wash dock, showed me every aspect of the job. There, I learned how to wash barges, repair barges, do fiberglass work. I worked on the dry dock area, learning how to weld, learn how to work a torch, learn how to drive a skid steer working there. I actually my first ever time in a swimming pool was working for AEP. When I was there because you got to go through the water survival training whenever you work there because you're working on the river. But everything that I needed to prepare me for Stevedoring, I got working at the wash dock, and I wouldn't have had that opportunity if it wasn't for my uncle putting in putting his name on the line for me. And I definitely appreciate that still to this day that he took a chance on me because at the time, I was a very young kid and I didn't have any type of experience in the industry like that. And even though like we was family, I still owe him for that. So
What did you know about the industry before that phone call to your uncle?
two, I really didn't know anything about the industry. I have two uncles actually that work in the industry. Of course, my uncle Cornelius Cummings, and I have another uncle that works in the industry, and he actually been with ACBL from the start. So he didn't make that transition from AEP to ACBL, but his name is Kevin Turner. So he was over the Harahan dock for a long time. Matter of fact, he's still with ACBL. He actually has a tugboat named after him. But they didn't really talk about work too much. I just knew, like just looking at the places where they lived, they both had nice houses. Um, both had good lifestyles. I just knew that the money had to be what it was in order for them to maintain that. So, and that's all I had my eyes on at the time was just really the money that you can make in this industry.
I think I know Kevin too, as a matter of fact. Because
Definitely.
I was with AEP about 6 months before they sold out, and I stuck with ACBL. Did you stick around?
So I was gone before that. I was actually already at Associated Terminals whenever that transition took place.
How many years with AEP?
Man, I wouldn't even say a year. I was there for 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah, so when I was with AEP, I wasn't directly under AEP. I was with Diamond L Contractors. So I worked at the wash dock. I was technically known as an employee. I went through the AEP training. I just wasn't officially an AEP employee. So I worked there for 6 months. And this is it's funny how the Lord works, but I was sitting inside of the crew shack one morning. This is a random morning. I can't even remember the day. But Vincent Pierce, he actually works with us right now at Associated Terminals, a welder. Anyway, at the time at AEP, he was supervisor over the dry dock. And Vincent walked in. I'm gonna call him Vinny. He won't get on me if I call him Vincent. But Vinny, he found me. He knew where I hung out in the morning, getting ready for the shift. So he walked inside of the crew shack, handed me an application for St. James Stevedoring, and just walked away. He didn't say anything. It's almost like he felt like I needed to get the application to, you know, I guess go down a different lane or whatever. And of course, like me being an 18-year-old kid, I'm like, hey man, anybody know about St. James Steve Dorn in here? And everybody's telling me the money was great, which at the time is all I cared about. You work 12-hour shifts, overtime, shift work, like overtime and money, like those were the key things that attracted me to the job. And there was a guy that used to carpool with me. His name is Flo. I don't know Flo's real government name. I just know him as Flo. But Flo, he actually caught a ride with me to Downsonville one day. He saw I had the application. He said, "Hey, John, you thinking about going to St. James Steve Dorn?" And I was like, "Man, I'm not gonna lie to you, man. I'm seriously considering going. Like, I'm liking what I'm hearing about the place." And Flo actually knew a guy. His name was Larry Allen. Larry Allen was actually he was supervised over the warehouse at St. James Steve Dorn, but he had a lot of time with the company and his name held a lot of weight. And here we go again with somebody putting their name on the line for me. So Flo said, "Hey, John, I know exactly where we could run to a guy that could give you a job there." So Flo actually directed me to the old St. James Steve Dorn warehouse. There, that's where we met Mr. Larry Allen. And Mr. Larry Allen pretty much offered me a job on the spot. He said, "Hey, John, if this guy right here is vouching for you, I trust him. Therefore, I'm gonna give you a job. But you have to make me one promise." He said, "Never be late." And I said, "Mr. Larry Allen, I promise you I'm gonna never be late." That man put his name on the line for me. I didn't even have to do an application. He called at the time it was Miss Irene. They offered me a job. The only issue was they offered me a job working at the warehouse. And after I got the call, I called Mr. Larry Allen. I said, "Mr. Larry Allen, I appreciate the job opportunity and I'm grateful. But man, is there a way I could possibly be on the river? I want to be on the river and not the warehouse. I know, for me, like, I just want to be where the money is, overtime and all that stuff." And Mr. Larry Allen, he actually made a call and he got me a job on the river as a deckhand class B, which was at the time an experienced deckhand because I had prior experience working at the wash dock. So Mr. Larry Allen did not know me. We didn't even really have many conversations and interactions after that. But that man put his name on the line for me, and that's what started my career in the Steve Dorn industry because of a guy Flo put his name on the line for me to Mr. Larry Allen, and Mr. Larry Allen trusting Flo so much that he gave me a job. And it's just like that's why I gotta say it's funny how the Lord works. If I didn't have the application with me, Flo wouldn't know that I was thinking about making that move. And that's how it all worked out for me at the end.
Before we get into details of your career that's now 10 years old with the stevedoring side of things, we did miss each other at AEP. I think I showed up a little bit after you did. You said 2015 you started with St. James.
Yes, sir. Well,
Um,
2014.
Okay, well then we
Yes,
definitely
sir.
miss each other because it was mid 15 before I even was in this industry.
Okay.
AEP was my first gig. I did though as a dispatcher take that water survival training in the pool. Now I
Yes.
don't know if the same instructor, same program exactly as you took, but what did you think about that, especially it being the first time you were in a pool?
Oh man, I was spooked. I was spooked. I was trying to walk on water, man. Whenever you're so used to like just like being on land and actually having something solid under you, whenever you get in that pool, it's a shocking experience that you cannot stand on anything solid. You're just in the middle of water. You got to learn how to float, which they will not let you drown in that class. Like no matter how hard you try, they'll knock you out if they got to. But that was an eye-opening experience for me. Being an 18-year-old person, first time ever being in the pool, that was bananas. So
Especially jumping in fully clothed jeans and steel toe boots, man.
yes.
I mean, I've been in pools for, out of many, many years. My dad had one. That was probably the first one I was in when I was, I don't know, 5. I almost drowned in his pool.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
that's a story my mom doesn't know. So if you're
Hey, as
listening,
long as you don't know, she
if
can't
you're
kill anybody.
listening, I made it. Um, so tell me now, the job of a barge washer. Back up to those first 6 months. Tell me about
Ooh,
all the
man.
stuff you learned, the labor that it took, kind of how your days went.
Yeah, so being a barge washer is a very simple job. All right. You pretty much gotta make your setup. So sometimes your typical day is washing about 4 to 5 barges. So they assign you to a tier at AEP or ACBL. They assign you to a tier, and whatever you got on that tier, that's how many barges you gotta wash. 4 to 5 days was a typical day. We mostly wash grain because they got a lot of barges from Zeno, the grain elevator right up the road. So you wash a lot of like corn, soybean, rice, the whole nine. And being a barge washer, you have the lead guy because you always work in teams, right? You work in a tandem buddy system. So you got the lead washer, which is the guy that's on the hose. This hose produce enough pressure to literally cut you. So PSI of like around 2 to 300 pounds per square inch of water coming out the hose. And then you have the assistant, and the assistant pretty much sets up something called a cypress. And cypress is pretty much just a vacuum that sucks the cargo and the water out the barge. You actually blow the gunnels of the walkways because whenever you're washing barges, you got to do the whole package. You wash it inside and you clean it outside. And the assistant normally did that. And the days were hot, even in the wintertime, like you didn't really have to wear a lot of clothes on you because it was labor intensive. The hose itself was relatively light, but the cypress, which is the vacuum that sucks the cargo out the barge, um, that weighs well over 100 pounds. And from the top of a fiberglass cover to the deck of the inside of a hopper, that's quite a pull. It's about
What about,
25.
yeah,
Yeah,
19 feet, if not more? Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, like 20, 25 feet, depending on how tall the covers are. And you're pulling that. And you gotta think about repetition. You're doing that 4 to 5 times a day. So I was in the best shape of my life whenever I was washing barges. I got down to 190 pounds. I was solid. I had a six pack. Um, I actually did go through some heat exhaustion though because I didn't know how to pace myself and drink enough water at the time because I was being a youngster thing and being macho man powering through the barges. But that was some very tough, labor intensive type work. Respect anybody that do that for a long span of time. I know some good guys like Hank and Q. They were the top guys. Really, it's still all the top guys, but at the time they was like 6 barges. Because as an employee with AEP, you actually got paid by the barge. So, they're trying to knock out as many barges as they can. But man, them dudes is like machines, man. Me, I don't know. It was just tough for me to do that. I don't think my body would have been able to maintain that long. It's what those guys are. But very simple job. You go inside the barge, using fall protection. You wash the cargo up the floor. You make sure you hit the walls, get all the dust off the walls, hit the top of the covers from the inside, and you pretty much push the cargo and water in one corner. You trap it right around where the cypress is sucking at, and you pretty much just feed that area until all the cargo and water is out the barge. And once the water and car goes out the barge, the lead washer moves on to the next barge. The assistant pulls out the cypress and wash the gunnel. Well, I'm saying wash the gunnel, blows the gunnel off where the residual cargo is, and you pretty much move on to the next barge. But it takes a full day to do that. It takes pretty much like from 8 to 3, in order to accomplish doing 4 to 5 barges.
Well, before that St. James application hit your lap that morning, what were you kind of thinking about the career opportunity you had with the barge at the wash dock?
Right. So just like any workplace, there was a lot of chatter going around because I made a name and I made a reputation for myself. I always had the reputation of being a hard worker. No matter what I did, I got that from my dad. Which my mom's a hard worker too, but my dad, that's like he's really the work ethic type guy. But no matter what I did, I don't care if I was flipping burgers, I don't care if I was stocking shelves, whatever it was. I wanted to do the best I possibly could at it. So there I made a reputation for myself as being a good worker. I was Cornelius' nephew. By then they already knew it. Somebody figured it out named Tipple. He saw me walking. He was like, "Hey, I know you. Somebody you relate to somebody out here." And he said Cornelius, but after that, everybody knew Jake was up then. But after that, with my work ethic mixed with being Cornelius's nephew, there was a rumor that I might be the next company guy because occasionally they had like a company spot that opened where you move a guy from being a contractor to being full time with the company, and that would have been my path. And if I would have ended up getting that before I ended up making that transition to St. James, there's no telling what I'll be right now. I'll probably be maybe a supervisor, superintendent, the whole nine at ACBL at the time.
So soon after that, we make a jump to St. James Stevedoring, and you were hired on to work in a warehouse, but we're trying to get out there on deck. How did that all
Yes,
work out for you? And then tell me about life on deck.
definitely. So it was just a phone call. Whenever I found out I was working at the warehouse, I called Mr. Larry Allen. I said, "Mr. Larry Allen, I appreciate the opportunity, but I love to be on the river." And he made that phone call. They hired me on as a deckhand class B. Hey, excuse me, Tim. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Getting over a cold.
No problem.
Ooh, Tim, I'm sorry. I'm sorry again, dude.
You're
I'm
good.
getting over this cold, so
No problem,
whenever this
man.
cough pops up, it pops up. So anyway, so back, I'm just gonna start all over again. My whole path. I know how it is editing podcasts. So so Mr. Larry Allen, they gave me a job at St. James Stevedoring as a warehouse guy. And I called Mr. Larry. I said, "Mr. Larry, I appreciate the opportunity, but I want to be on the river." So Mr. Larry made a phone call to Miss Irene at the time. They reclassified me as a deckhand class B, which was an experienced deckhand, and they offered me a job. Um, and going from washing barges to now being in the stevedoring industry, what does that entail, right? Completely different industries. I was on the wash and repair side when I first started on the river. Now I'm transitioning to stevedoring, which is big cranes, massive equipment. We got buckets at 61 cubic yards at the time, massive payloaders, trackhoes, excavators. Where do I fit in with all this, right? My job as a deckhand is pretty much helping out the lead deckhand. I was his assistant. So helping draft barges, helping tie off barges, helping shift the rig, working ropes on that side of the rig as well. Flagging equipment inside of ship holds. Um, helping maintenance out, maintaining equipment. If you have a guy outside, maintaining the equipment, working on it, doing preventive maintenance, you assist with that. So my job as a deckhand was pretty much helping everybody. And being in that role, I wasn't really in a deckhand spot long. It took me about 3 weeks to master everything on the deck, all aspects of the job. I had a extremely great trainer. He was actually a former Marine. His name is Billy York. But Billy York was actually my instructor whenever we went through training. And so we had about 2 weeks with Billy York, and he was such a good trainer that by the time I got to the river, it didn't really take a long time for me to make a name for myself because he taught us how to draft using a drafting tape, which it's checking the side marks of the bars to see how much cargo's inside. He taught us how to flag using hand signals because a lot of people they use radio, excuse me, but sometimes you don't have the radio at your disposal, so you got to know how to use hand signals. But he pretty much taught us all aspects of the job. And by the time I got out to the field, made a quick name for myself. I stepped in where they had a vacancy at, and I became a lead deckhand in a matter of weeks.
Well, keep walking me through your career from that point forward, man. It's all with the same company, so won't bounce around too much like my career has up until till I found Ingram in mid-18. But anyway,
Excuse me. Right, Tim. Is this separate audio whenever you edit, or is it all one?
it's all one.
All right. I'm gonna try to mute myself if I got a cough.
Don't worry about it. I chop it up, dude. It's
Okay.
fine.
All right. Perfect, man. So at St. James Stevedoring, I was there for a short period of time. I was under the supervision of Todd Weber, which he's currently at ADM Arco. But Todd Weber was my direct report. He was the manager of Crew 2. So Todd Weber, he put me in a lot of positions to actually learn things. Whenever we had to do jack lines, which is changing out the cables inside of a crane bucket, which is a tedious process if you don't know what you're doing. Todd Weber always had me in the mix on a crew learning how to do jack lines, and that's why I became a master of jack lines. I was a floater, so even though I was assigned to one crew, one crane operator, I bounced around. I worked with a lot of different crane operators, and I'll say that that had a really big impact on my life in order to be versatile because in life, you're never going to have the perfect crew. Sometimes you got to work with different people. And I actually got that experience early because since I was a floater, I'm working with a different crane operator every day. This crane operator wanted things a certain way compared to the next guy. So I got to learn different ways of how to do the job and different approaches on how to get things done. And the more ways you know how to get a job complete, it actually it makes you stronger. It makes you more versatile in this space. So I was known as a lead deckhand at St. James Stevedoring, even though I was only classified as a deckhand. So therefore, opportunity came up. We found out that Associated Terminals was buying St. James Stevedoring. This happened maybe 3 to 4 months after I was employed at St. James Stevedoring. So that comes with a lot of uncertainty, right? It's like, what does that mean for me? I'm a new guy. Will I get a job somewhere? And Todd Weber, he actually said that I'm gonna get a job. No matter which company it is, both companies gonna offer you. And lo and behold, both companies ended up offering me, in which I ended up going with ADM originally. And things kind of changed later on down the line. Associated caught wind that I was kind of still open for grabs, up for grabs to make that change. Some people ended up talking to me and convincing me to actually make that jump to Associated. Um, the offer that was made to me actually superseded what ADM was giving me, and I ended up actually signing on with Associated Terminals. So whenever the transition took place, which was March 12th, 2015, I was then an Associated Terminals employee.
And how did your career develop from there?
Oh man, so going in the door at Associated Terminals in March of 2015, I came in the door as an oiler. So my job every day was be the lead man of the rig, maintain equipment, lead a crew, draft barges, operate winches, um, pretty much just like a junior supervisor, but over a crew, right? Um, Whatever the crane operator wanted, my job was to make his job easy. Which at the time I worked with a crane operator. His name was Thomas Ramagas. He was on the river for a long time. Matter of fact, when I first started working with him, he was running crane, just operating crane for 27 years. And at the time, I was a 19-year-old kid. So this guy literally operated crane longer than I've been on Earth for. And with that being said, me and Thomas, we actually developed a good working relationship to where he saw I was hungry. At the time, I was a really hungry kid, some people may describe me as, because I was so young. I wanted that crane so bad. Every chance, every opportunity I got, I was up in that crane cab with Thomas, and he pretty much took me to school like a college professor. Um, excuse me, taught me all the ins and outs of operating a crane, taught me the ins and outs of a stevedore, like working the ships as a supervisor because he actually had previous supervisor experience, but he taught me how to plan out a vessel, all this, just working with him. And I also had some great mentorship, not only from Thomas, but there's some other great crane operators, Ron Roto, DJ Cage, Osborne Kelson, Kevin Malone, Chet Gidry, um, Torrance Horton, Farron Freeman, Joe Thompson, Bruce Warner. Like a lot of those guys. If you work in the stevedoring industry, those names hold weight, and those are some of the few guys that I learned from. Nick Cortez is another guy, Ricky Jackson. I just want to make sure I get it. I give props to those guys. But I was a sponge, and each one of those guys had something they could teach me, and help me in my journey in becoming a great crane operator. And I must say that I eventually got my opportunity. I'll say 2.5 years later, after being a green deckhand, not knowing anything about the industry, to now I got my own crew. So I actually ended up getting my own crew in July of 2017. That was due to the crane operator that was actually assigned to that crane. He went to Tennessee for some personal affairs. They needed somebody to operate the crane, and I was the guy. So the Randy W was my first crane, working by myself, which was the start of something big, and that's where my life changed.
When did you say that was in 17?
Yeah, so that was
2017?
July of 2017. That's whenever I got my first job as a lead operator on a crane.
And we missed each other there too.
Yes.
From February of 16, when ACBL first acquired us. I want to say I was 6 months. It may have been. We may have crossed paths
Right.
because in mid 16, I ended up getting a job dispatching Tiger Fleet in Port Allen and also the three Convent ship anchorages. I know the Randy W. A handful of names you just went through. I've talked to them on the phone.
Yes.
2 hours on the Miss Irene or whatever it was, hour and a half on Randy,
Yes.
all that kind of stuff. So it's bringing back some interesting memories. Um,
Definitely. Quick question, Tim. Do you know
yeah,
Wayne Leday?
absolutely.
Yes, Wayne Leday. He's actually one of the guys that facilitated me going to Associated Terminals instead of ADM Arco.
Okay.
Yes. So he was going to Associated Terminals, and it's funny how God works. Like I say that, like hey, man makes plans, God laughs, right? But I got redirected to Convent. No, I got redirected from Convent to Destrehan, which is mile marker 122. There's where I ran to Wayne. And Wayne said, "Hey, John, where are you going? Are you going to ADM Arco or are you going to Associate?" I said, "Well, I'm going to ADM because money talks, right?" And when I said money talks, he said, "What if I get you more at Associated?" And I was like, "Hey, if you could do that, I'm there." And he actually ended up making a phone call because the original offer that Associated gave me, they was going off of what I was actually classified as on paper. So they didn't necessarily know my reputation at the time. They just had to offer me what I was classified as because of St. James didn't get the paperwork right at the time. So um, whenever they found out who I really was and what I really was doing, they actually switched things around. It was like, you know what? This guy is an oiler. He's been doing it for us since day one. And so by the time Associate gave me an offer, it was actually a little bit more than what ADM gave me at the time. And so therefore, as a young guy being closer to home, I was closer to my mom being in a convent. I decided to go back and go to Associate Terminals. And if it wasn't for Wayne Leday, me running to him, I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity. I probably would have, went that away. Who knows how my career would have turned out, but Wayne Leday, he actually played a crucial part and facilitating that move. And I'm grateful for him.
All right, so I'm not sure how far we got into your time with Associated, but so you're on as an oiler and you're performing well. Where does
Yes.
your career take you from there?
Yeah, so my career took me to the crane. So 2.5 years later, I became a crane operator. I was on a Randy W. I was pretty good. I was pretty good, but whenever things really made a turn for me was whenever I got transferred from the Randy W to the Miss Terra. And my whole career, as an oiler, I decked on the Miss Terra. So I knew that crane inside and out. I maintained that crane. I knew all the sweet spots. I trained on that crane. So it was like a match made in heaven. Um, so I got on that crane and I know it's like we was meant for each other. Um, Ended up breaking history. I had remarkable crews. People that's in management now actually worked under me. Well, I'm saying under me, but they worked with me while I was on the Miss Terra. Sean Paul, he's currently in management. He was my equipment operator at the time. Anthony Griffith, he is now a crane operator. He worked from with me on the Miss Terra. Eddie Clayton, he's now in management. He worked with me on the Miss Terra. So the Miss Terra has a lot of prestigiousness about it to where it's a good chance that if you work on that crane, you know what excellence is like, and therefore you get opportunities later on down the line. But our crews was fantastic. We moved over 1 million tons in the year of 2018, just from the month of January to October, whenever I got offered to be a production manager. But you know, David Ryan, I seen your interview with him a while back. He is he's one of our vice presidents. He's in sales, and he made the reference to like the capabilities of the cranes that we operate. So I operated something called a Gottwald 8400. That crane has it's a duty cycle max capacity of 63 tons. But there's something called a tonnage curve on all cranes, right? And a tonnage curve, it gives you allowance to actually lift more than what the max is. That's where that 50-ton number comes from whenever he made reference to it. So that's true. At times per cycle, which is, you making a grab out the ship, you're loading the barge and you going back to the ship. That takes place 60 to 90 seconds per cycle. And if you're grabbing 50 tons per 60, 90 seconds, you're moving a lot of tonnage. And that's why I think this industry, I think is fascinating. It's just as fascinating as working with tugboats because, it being in the industry, we move a lot of cargo. You know, for a shift, my personal shift, we used to do about 6 barges a day. So 6 barges at 1,850 tons, that's 11 to 12,000 tons per day that we actually accounted for in moving, which is a lot of weight. You got to think about, a tugboat pushing barges in tow. If you're pushing the tow of 20 something barges, you know, I'm not saying that we move more tons than what a tugboat pushes, but if I'm doing 6 barges a day and that's at 5 days a week, I'm moving a lot of barges and I'm producing a lot of cargo. So that's the beauty in Stevedoring, that it doesn't take long at all to move a lot of tons. And I say whenever it comes to moving tons at associated terminals, we're probably the best on the river to do it because we figured out how to safely do it um while being efficient at the same time. So and that's why I give a lot of credit to associated terminals for maximizing us and giving us the safest opportunity to do things.
And we in barge dispatch do appreciate the speed with which these barges are loaded and discharged. Um,
100%.
when I was dispatching the ship anchorages there in Convent, at some point, I don't remember, it was a weekend. Uh, we did 7 on, 7 off. Well, Jason Pape was on a vessel. I forget the DDG or I don't know, Pet Coke. I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
But he says, "Hey, come on out. Go help on the crew boat right there at ACBL's dock." And I just grabbed my jacket, put on my boots, and I had never in my life thought I'd be on that ship, dude. that stairwell's dropping down, and I'm standing on the back end of this crew boat, thinking I'm out of my fucking mind. Um, well, luckily it was a drop down stairwell and not a damn straight up the damn side of the vessel ladder. That would I would have just said never mind. But
Yeah, those are tough.
I get up there, just walking up to an oiler or a deckhand or whoever it was. I said, "Look for Jason." He just kind of points way off in the distance, and I see this ramp, from your crane barge or platform or whatever, straight up. And I get up there, and it was Jason and Derek. Uh,
Derek Rice, Sugar.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, he was up there too. And I'm just looking up at this crane, and this bucket's right over me. And Sugar's like, "Hey, dude, come here. Get
Watch
out
your
of
head, buddy.
yeah, get out of the way of that thing." So
Yeah.
watching the vastness of it, and then I think Jason had to get down in a hold. So watching that whole process was absolutely fascinating. Because from my perspective, a customer calls us, says, "Hey, I need 30 barges for this vessel." Well, we get all
Yeah.
that mapped out and planned. It's just data manipulation and logistics planning in the system. But to actually get out there and see, okay, this is why we're doing it. This is,
Right.
it's always good to have that perspective, I think, especially as a dispatcher, to kind of understand what goes on out there. All right, so where do we go next? I think you said you've got your crew, you got the Miss Tara. Where is
Definitely.
your career going since then?
Hey, and Tim, I want to kind of cover Jason Pape a little bit
Sure.
because Jason Pape, he actually played a crucial part in my career also. He was actually my production manager that I was assigned to. So I worked with Jason Pape every day, right? Shoulder to shoulder. Um, one of the best human beings there is. Hard worker, give you the shirt off his back. Passionate guy, cares about the industry, cares about his job. Me and him butted heads from time to time. I yelled at him, he yelled back, but at the end of the day, one thing about us, we always shook hands and we said, "Hey man, buddy, I'm sorry about that. Let's move forward." But if it wasn't for Jason Pape, I wouldn't have became a crane operator. I probably would have been gone before that because it was a little bit of disputes going on. I thought that I misunderstood, how fast I was gonna get paid, and all that stuff. And Jason Pape was actually the one that said, "Hey, John, hold on, um, let me make something happen." You know what I'm saying? Let me see what I could do. And therefore, shortly after, I actually came across um Mr. Jerry Ryan, in which, I ended up having a conversation with him. He was like, "Hey, John, how everything going?" And I told him like, it's going, but it's not really going the way I thought it was. And Jerry actually, which one thing about Jerry Ryan, I know you know David well. I haven't interviewed him, but Jerry is actually his brother. And one thing about Jerry is he cares about the people. That is like his number one priority, making sure people's taken care of, especially his good people, good guys. And whenever I told Jerry kind of what was going on, like I felt like I wasn't really getting things moving as fast as I should. Um, within a week, within a week, everything was addressed and taken care of. Just because of things that I was promised. Being given a job as a flex crane operator at the time. So Jason Pape, if it wasn't for him facilitating that, and kind of like putting his arm over me, like, "Hey man, calm down, relax," like, "Hey, it's gonna happen for you. Just wait it out, be patient." All the times that we worked together, I got his perspective on life and in the industry because he got a lot of time on the water as well. He just made 20 years before something happened to where he had to um, retire a little bit early. But if it wasn't for Jason, like my career probably wouldn't be what it is. So I got to say that I got to give a lot of credit to him, and I appreciate him. We do keep in touch for the most part. His birthday, was the last time I called up with him and told him happy birthday. It was kind of like quick and short, but Jason Pape, he was good to me. So that's all I got to say.
Yeah, he was always a great guy. Working with him was real easy. I'd take a ride down, meet him in the little office that was not too far from ours there in
Right.
Convent. Um, well, I guess, is that where your career got to, and that's where we are today?
No, I
Okay.
mean we It's pretty much it's just started. So I became a crane operator on a Randy W. I transferred to the Miss Terra, and it led us to making history. We moved a lot of tons at a rapid rate. I had remarkable crews, and an opportunity came up in management. And Milton Morgan, he was a production manager at the time, which I used to aggravate him because we did so many barges. You know, you saw us run out of space on his notepad where he had this page or whatever. That's what he used to tell me, like, "Hey, John, slow down," or whatever. But he knew that management was a possibility for me. And they had an opening pop up, well, quite a few openings. This was in 2018, where they had like four different vacancies in that role. And he said, "John, you need to apply because I think that they want you in management." And of course, like hearing that, I'm a little bit skeptical. I'm like, man, like, why would they want me in management if I'm making them so much money in the crane? I'm moving so many tons, you know, me and my crew, you know, we're doing 6, 7 barges a day. Like why would they want to lose that type of production from me to be in management, right? And but anyway, I listened to Milton. He was a good buddy of mine, mentor. I applied, I interviewed, and after walking out of the interview, and this is funny how this kind of works. I'm thinking it in my mind, Jerry Ryan, he asked me, I don't know if I need to be talking about this or not, but in the interview, he said, "John, you make us so much money in the crane. How do we benefit moving you from the crane into management?" And whole time I'm thinking this, you know, like throughout the interview, I'm like, man, we move so many tons, you know, as a crane operator, like why would they pick me? And this man is asking me what I'm thinking. It's crazy, like how they know, you know, like your thought process and how you approach things. And I didn't have the right answer. I said, hey, I don't know, man. I mean, kind of up to y'all to decide, you know, like, but, and his mindset was, you know, "John, you produce so much on one crane. We want you to take your mindset, the way you approach your job, the way you pursue excellence every day. We want you to do that over a multitude of cranes." And that's what some people don't realize about management. You know, whenever you're in management, you're not necessarily in control. You know, your job is to, like a head coach, kind of like a Bill Belichick or a Tony Dungy. You know, your job is to inspire and motivate and make sure people are doing what they're supposed to do. And and for the most part, I did that as a crane operator because in order for all my crews that I was working with to be on board for us to move that many tons, I had to make sure they bought in to how I wanted my shift to be every day. And I was doing that in management. You know, I had to get people to buy in. Well, anyway, after I flunked that question, I still ended up getting a job offer. So in that class, it was me, um, Leslie Fletcher, Imani Adams, which Imani is actually a former LSU football player, one of my best friends on the job, good dude. I love Fish. They call him Fish. And Ryan Richard, he's currently a manager over Atlantic Alumina, Noranda, ATP. So really strong class of guys, and I actually ended up getting a job with them. And for being a production manager, I did that for about a year and a half. So I got management in October 2018. I held that job all the way to March 31st of 2020. And here's why I can remember the exact date. So of course, early 2020, what's going on around that time? You got COVID going on, you got the pandemic going on, right? A whole bunch of uncertainty going around in the world. I think at that time they already mandated only essential workers could be out and about in the streets. So excuse me, there was a lot of uncertainty going on about like how the world's gonna be. Is the world's gonna ever be the same? Is it the end of the world? Is it, you know, World War Z? Like what is this? And with that being said, the company had to reorganize and therefore they had to make some cuts in management. So with that came was I had to actually step back and go back to the crane for a couple months until the world figured out what it was going to do, right? So I went from management, I went back to the crane for 9 months, running the Miss Terra, which is it's crazy how I can't get away from Miss Terra. But running the Miss Terra for 9 months, and then later on in the year, whenever the economy picked back up and things got back better again, more things started to open, things got back to normal. Later in 2020, I ended up getting my job offer to get back in management. So whenever I got back in management, they kind of treated that 9 months like I was still serving as a production manager, and I still actually got my raise on time, which is a blessing. So now I'm a level 3 production manager. I got a new outlook on management because going back to the crane, I was thinking like, man, if I'm back in the spot again, how could I be better than what I was before? And so I still was challenging myself mentally every day. I was back moving tons. I mean, we're back number 1 in production, me and my crew, which at this time I had a different crew because I was on a different different labor crew altogether. But it made me appreciate being in management more whenever I got that opportunity again after Danny Sr. called me and said, "Hey John, you my guy. I got an opportunity. Here you go." You know what I'm saying? So from that point, I went back to being a production manager, moved a lot of tons there, had very little incidents, ended up getting topped out, which probably was the youngest guy at this time to ever be topped out. I think at the time I was maybe 27. I was 27 years old, already 4 years in management. And then an opportunity came up for me to do the job that I'm in now, which is being a crane manager. And I applied for that job, and I ended up getting that job over some highly qualified people, in which I'm still surprised to this day that I got it. But my day-to-day job now is my typical day is like 7 to 4, 7 to 5. Some days it's later, but I oversee 3 cranes. The Kevin D is one of them, which is stationed at Mosaic all the time. We have a Cat 6015, which is the first of its kind on the river, offloading barges at Mosaic, which is one of my biggest customers. Um, in a very tough spot, there I manage a telestacker, which is a 150-foot conveyor. Um, the machine itself, the environment, and we work, with a 12-man crew over there. Good guys that work hard every day. Another crane I manage is the F Walker, which been in operation since 2009. It's a 6400 series Gottwald. Good dudes on that crane as well. And then there's another crane that I manage called the Glen S, which is Associated's oldest Gottwald. So that comes with its challenges. But those are 3 cranes that I manage, and it's a blessing. It's a blessing that they at the time they gave a 28-year-old this opportunity to manage millions and millions of dollars of assets, and that I'm responsible for on a daily basis. I'm responsible for the health of the crane. I'm responsible for making sure that everything is compliant with safety. I'm responsible for making sure that the people that's assigned to those cranes are getting paid. Because I got to approve time every day. I got to make sure that they're getting promotions whenever they need to. If they do something wrong, I'm in charge of discipline. So every aspect of the business of concerning that crane, I'm involved in. If a crane is stationed at like a place like Mosaic, I'm responsible with communicating with our customer in that right. I'm responsible for the damaged barges at Mosaic, making sure that those are getting facilitated and getting repaired, and staying on top of the accurate count. So it's a lot of stuff that I do on a day-to-day basis. I'm pretty much in junior operations manager. Even though like my classification says crane manager, I'm still involved with like a lot of the day-to-day decisions that's being made for the business. And like I said, man, I was 28 years old when I first got in that spot. Well, 20, I'm sorry, 27 years old when I first got in that spot. I'm 30 now, and it's a blessing, man. It's a blessing that I got all these opportunities at such a young age, and it's also a blessing that they took a chance on me. Because when I first started running crane, I was 22 years old, and like not a lot of companies would give young guys like that a chance, but they saw something in me, and I'm grateful.
Absolutely, man. Really happy to hear that. Happy for you. Um, what's the most challenging part of your job today?
Too man. um, some days, some days it could be rough. I don't necessarily have a set schedule on when I have to be at work. Sometimes with me being a family now, I had to be at work late. So some days I get off of work at midnight. If a project is wrapping up late, like a repair to a piece of our equipment or something like that, or if something breaks, my phone rings, odd hours of the night. So I could say that that's probably the biggest challenge that I have whenever I got to be away from my family for extended period of time because something is being prolonged at work that I have to be there for. So, but as far as that goes, that's a part of the job. That's what we sign up for whenever we're in management. Our phone, like even now, my phone never is off. So if it goes off and something happened on my asset, I had to be there to address that. But I'll say that's probably the biggest challenge there is. Just you got to be involved 24 hours of the day.
How about your favorite part of the job?
Man, my favorite part of the job is getting opportunity to pick where I work every day and spending time with people. Like throughout the years, I've always wanted to pay forward the knowledge that was bestowed upon me. I ran across some great people, some great mentors over the years that had a lot of knowledge to give me. And one of my favorite parts is actually being able to pass that on to other people. Going up in the crane, spending time with some crane operators, running the cranes, keeping my skills sharp and all that stuff, but passing on the way I see things on a day-to-day basis or why I do certain things while I was in the crane, why I do certain things on the deck, just passing on that knowledge. That's my favorite part of the job.
Well, you seem pretty driven, pretty ambitious. I look forward to seeing what develops for you in the next 10 years or so. But before we wrap up here, man, I have not yet had the pleasure of the opportunity to have children of my own. But tell me about that experience. 6 months into that now. How is that going for you?
Man, whew, the biggest blessing I've
And
ever
and with twins. So
and
sorry, go
with
ahead.
twins. Man, so being a father of twin girls is the biggest blessing that I could have possibly received. Um, Now it is a challenge. Because instead of, trying to, keep one baby settled, you got to settle two. So therefore, I have a remarkable partner. She pretty much picks up the load, for the most part at night, to where I could get enough rest to go to work. But like for the most part, whenever I get home from work, I'm helping care for two girls. Um, they're growing fast. They're 6 months old. I got one in a walker moving around a good bit. I got one talking already saying dada. So that whole process, man, it's been remarkable. It's been beautiful. Um, I did not think that in my future I would have been a dad of twin girls. I knew I'll have one or two separately, but two for one, it's tough, but at the same time, it's a blessing because two birds, one stone. Whatever. They're both gonna be graduating the same time. They're both their birthdays the same day. Less planning you got to do on separate days and all that stuff, but the whole process has been beautiful. And most importantly, my mom's a grandmother. This is her first grandkids, and seeing her be able to be a grandmother, a grandparent, you know, um, I'm glad I was able to do that for her. Give her grandbabies and something to really keep her young. You know what I'm saying? And same for my dad. So it's been beautiful, man. That's the reason why I get up and go to work every day, for them. you know, in order for them to have a good life later on. So.
Again, glad to hear it, man. Really happy for you. That
Sure.
pretty much covers all my stuff. I was going to ask you a little bit about your uncle, but we're going to try and get him on the show here soon.
Yeah,
A
definitely.
couple of months from now, I think is what we talked about.
Definitely.
But is there anything else you want to discuss
Yeah.
about me, about
There-
the podcast? What else you got going on?
Man, there's one more thing I didn't really cover throughout my career. So as you mentioned, that being in dispatch, you get those calls whenever we're ready for another barge. To bring another barge. But man, those captains, Captain Austin O'Bannon, me and him actually got a good working relationship from being out there in that industry. Um, He helped me out as a crane operator. He helped me out a lot as a production manager. Captain Jake Wilkerson, Timmy, good dude. Captain Jay, Captain Dave, Chris Davenport, Chris Pass. Like those guys. Mike. I just want to make sure I get those guys that they're just due. But ACBL and Convent, those captains are first class, top notch. And I definitely appreciate them because hey, without those guys bringing barges in a timely manner, dispatch. Thank you, thank Wayne, thank Roy, thank Caitlin. Without y'all being on y'all A game, facilitating all those moves, um, that affects my career because I'm not able to do what I'm doing, moving barges as a production manager, moving barges as a crane operator, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful to ACBL most first and foremost, and anybody else that I ever work with. But the tugboat company, the tugboats, especially at Voyager, man, I appreciate y'all, man. If y'all watching. And Tim, thank you, man. I know you was calling around a lot of barges around that time as well, man. So it's a blessing.
You just mentioned Windfall list of names from my past too. You
Yes.
said Dave. Is that Dave Hoyt you're talking about?
Yes.
What you think about old Dave Hoyt? That is, he was running as a trip pilot between
Yes.
between Pinto Island and Mobile and AM&S and Calvert. That was my first gig with AEP dispatching.
Yes.
Well, I get this call from this guy. I don't know from anybody, and he is certainly self-assured. He's been there, done that. Just ask him. But what's your experience been
100%.
like with him?
Man, with Captain Dave, man, a lot of people don't get the type of interactions that I get with Captain Dave, man. Whenever I talk to Captain Dave, it's always kind of like, it's not as harsh. It's kind of like more like it's mutual respect between us. He's been in the industry a long time. Like you said, he's seen a lot, he's done a lot. He still does a lot to this day. He's on the lead boat, he's on the Voyager. So I still talk to him from time to time about stuff that's going on at Uncle Sam. But yeah, Dave Hoyt, man, he's a good guy, man. Good guy. Could be rough around the edges if you try to mess him over, but outside of that, man, self assured, confident in his abilities, and one of the best to ever do it.
Yeah, I've been nudging him, trying to get him to come on here. Timmy and Austin too, but
Yes,
no luck so far. Maybe this episode will inspire some participation. But
definitely, man. I tell you what, Tim, it would be nice if you could get it's two people I'd like for you to go after. They're not necessarily well, one's in the stevedoring industry, but one is not. If you could get Paul Matthews on one day, he's the CEO of the Port of South Louisiana. Um, the Port of South Louisiana been making a lot of big time moves, big time expansions, going after a lot of companies. So they're being really aggressive, but they got the funding from the federal government. But this guy always got a lot to say. Good dude. I met him a couple times at a couple of events. We worked the waterways and events like that. And Derek Cador. Derek Cador, he actually works for Artco Stevedoring, which is, I mean, technically our competitor, but he's a good guy. He has a lot of insight. He was actually the one that put me in the crane originally years ago, for that flex operator spot whenever he was working in human resources for us. But he's been around a long time. His family been around a long time, from Cooper to Associated to now ADM Marco. And I think he got a lot of insight. He's a good dude too. But he's actually operations manager over at ADM Marco. So yeah, but that's two guys you got to get on your list, man. I think
okay,
they'll have good stories.
I'll see if I can't reach both of them. Maybe they'll see this episode that they know you real well. But look,
Yes,
man,
sir.
we've covered plenty of ground. I do appreciate your participation, man. If you want to get back on, and like I said, if you're available, we'll grab a bite to eat or something one of these days.
Oh, 100%, man. Yeah, I'm gonna catch you around one day, Tim, and I'm blessed to be a part of your podcast, man. I'm happy to see the growth that you're seeing with this channel, man. And you've been having some good guys on this channel, and I'm glad to be a part of it, man. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, bud. We'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir.
This has been a production of Where You At Studios, LLC.